Welcome, everybody. As Elena mentioned, we're gonna this is something new that we're trying out this year to help you guys get a better sense of the various practice groups that we have at Vincent Elkins and what a career in those practice groups might look like. It's a little bit tough sometimes in law school to get a sense of what lawyers do on a day-to-day basis, and especially for folks who have only been at it a couple months now. So hopefully you guys are joining us because you are interested in learning about what a career in tax or executive compensation or it might look like, and not because you have nothing better to do on 5:30 and on a Thursday night. But hopefully you'll get a chance to hear what we do in our practice here. And like Elena said, we certainly would love for you guys to send some questions. If you'll just click on the chat button, we'll be able to see those questions here. We'll be able to respond. Okay, you want to go to the next slide? Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, so I think maybe we'll just kick off by having each of the panelists. We've got a diverse group here of different offices, different tenures. So if we could just have the group here introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. Patricia, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Patricia Adams. I am a partner in the Executive Compensation and Benefits Group in New York, and I've been at V&E for 3 years now.
Hi, I'm Henry Kroll. I'm a third-year associate in the Executive Compensation Group, but I'm out of Houston, and so I've been here just over 2 years now.
And I'm David Peck. I'm a partner in the tax group. You can tell my picture looks a little bit better than my actual because I asked them to use AI to make me look more like Tom Brady than I actually do. I've been at V&E in the tax group for 27 years, always in the Dallas office, always in the same building, not necessarily in the exact same office, but always on the same side of the building. So not a lot of variation in my career.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Adriana Wirtz. I'm a partner in the New York office. I'm a member of the tax group. My practice is focused primarily on tax controversies, audits, and disputes, and I joined V&E in January of 23.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Myron Konkowski. I'm a senior associate here in the Dallas office in the tax group. I'm actually about 2 doors down from David. I like to tell myself I already look like Tom Brady, so I didn't need to get it photoshopped to do that. But looking forward to sharing with you all a little bit about our practice and our firm.
Good. All right. Next slide. Okay. So maybe before we get into specifics about the tax and the executive compensation, to give you a little overview on the organizational structure of V&E. So going back, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years now, we organized our firm based on practice group. So historically, law firms organized a lot around geography, and you'd sort of work with the team in your office and have local clients. But as the practice is globalized, it makes a lot more sense to be organized based on practice group. And so we've got a number of different practice groups, and you guys might have attended some of the other sessions and learned about those. But we also have departments, and so we have 3 departments that we organized around V&E. We've got a transaction department, which is our largest, and it has things like corporate, real estate, finance, restructuring, and certainly some others I'm missing. We have our litigation group, litigation and regulatory. So our general litigation, we've got appellate, regulatory, environmental, things like that. And then the group here on the video with you is fortunate enough to have our very own department. So the tax and executive compensation group, even though we're definitely the smallest department, we are in our very own department, and that that sort of suggests to you, or maybe you guys can pick up on the fact that, that the tax and executive compensation groups here are very well thought of. And we're not just sort of a small part of a bigger department. We have our own department, we have our own representation. I'm actually the chair of that department. And so it's, while it's the smallest of the departments, it is, you know, a very important part of the firm, and we work closely with the folks in the other departments as well on all the transactions we work on. Okay, next slide. One more. I guess we'll start out with the tax, and then we'll go to ECB. And Adriana, you want to go through this one?
Our tax partners, counsel and associate, we're located throughout our different offices. Like I said, I'm in New York, David is in Dallas, and as is Myron, but we have lots of counsel partners, associates in Houston, Austin, DC, LA. I mean, one of the great things about B&E is that we work across offices. So while I work with my partners, my tax partners and associates and counsel in the New York office, I don't think I've had a day at B&E since January 2023 where I wasn't working with someone from another office. We're regularly traveling to our other offices, and if we're not traveling to another office, we're on a Zoom call or a phone call with a member of our fellow offices.
Yeah, one thing just to note here is, and you guys, if you're interested in a career in tax executive comp, one thing to pay attention to is what percentage of a law firm's lawyers are comprised of tax and ECB lawyers. And I think you'll find that V&E has a significantly higher percentage per capita of our lawyers. Again, underlining the importance of, you know, those roles in our firm, and the value that we bring to our firm and our clients. Next slide.
This slide covers the different practice areas within tax. We have a lot of folks in the tax group, but we don't all do the same thing. I don't work on deals. That's what we have David and Myron for. I do controversy and litigation. So what does that mean? I'm regularly advising our clients who are either under audit by the IRS or they're in a dispute with the IRS because the IRS has disagreed with their return position. Maybe we're in a refund posture. So we will represent clients before the IRS, in the audit, in the administrative appeal, if it goes there, or if it proceeds further in litigation, we'll represent our clients in court. We represent clients before the tax court, federal claims court, district court, and then if it is appealed to the Court of Appeals, we take on the appeal. We also, as part of that controversy work, will help advise clients during the pre-audit stage and how to be ready in the event of an audit by the IRS. I'm going to let David tell you about the other practice areas within tax.
Yeah. So let me start with, okay, what do we not do in the tax group at B&E? And number one on that list is we do not file any returns. We're not staying up on April 15th or October 15th preparing anybody's return. I don't think I've filed, and never would, a single tax return in my career. That's what the accountants do. We're more focused on transactional structuring and legal aspects. We also don't do math. Nothing more than maybe simple algebra, occasionally, you know, a formula drawn by hand, but I use my iPhone as my calculator. So if people are scared because of those things, rest assured that that's not what we do. So what do we do? A couple of categories. So transactional tax, it involves helping clients who want to engage in some sort of business transaction. They want to acquire a company or assets. They want to be acquired. They want to go public. They want to form a joint venture. They want to spin off. They want to expand their presence to another jurisdiction. They want to invest in something overseas. And I have this presentation, we won't go through it today, but a simple presentation where company A and company B want to combine or merge. And I counted about 20 different ways that could happen. Company A could buy company B could buy company A, they could merge together and one survives. And of those 20 different ways, you have 20 different tax results. And so a lot of times it's left to the tax lawyers to decide which of those 20 is the right way to do it and come up with the blueprints. And so in a lot of those transactions, the tax becomes the architects of the transaction. We create the blueprints. We do almost all the slide decks that show how the transaction is supposed to operate. All because tax efficiency and tax savings are some of the most important elements of almost any transaction. The second category is tax equity. So there are a number of areas where government subsidies are important for those areas to prosper, and renewable energy is one of those, at the top of the list. And so almost every renewable energy investment would not underwrite to a profitability without a government subsidy. And so a big part of the practice of renewables is making sure those government subsidies are available, that are captured, they're maximized, and that they're provided to the person who can benefit the most from them and is willing to pay the most for them. And they are very complicated transactions. And so almost every renewables investment, every renewables project is going to have a tax equity component, tax credit component that our teams are going to preside over. And then the third category, you might think, well, restructuring or bankruptcy or distressed workouts involve companies that are not financially performing. So they're probably not going to have tax issues, because if you don't make money, you don't pay income taxes, but that's not actually how it plays out at all. Even companies that are not profitable, that are generating losses, or that have credits that they're not utilizing to offset their income, need tax representation to help preserve those credits, to help navigate them through a restructuring or bankruptcy process. And so those bankruptcies and restructurings end up being pretty tax intensive as well. So we've got folks, and really, to sum up, just about any transaction that any of the transactional lawyers, you remember on the first slide, we showed the departments, and our transactional group has 55% of lawyers. Virtually everything they work on has a tax impact to it, and somebody in the tax group multiple people in the tax group are going to be assigned to work on those matters and to work with the transactional lawyers. And like Adriana was saying, work across office with transactional lawyers in all of the V&E offices that are handling those matters. Next.
Okay, so I will give you an overview of executive compensation and benefits. And like David said at the beginning of this presentation, it's great that we're doing this now. I'm thrilled that we're doing this, because I would venture to guess that no one on this call, aside from the V&E people, even know what executive compensation and benefits means. You definitely really don't hear about it in law school, so you really don't know about it until you meet someone who does it. So I'm thrilled to get this opportunity to discuss it with you now. Just a little bit about how our group is organized. It's similar to the tax group. We're in different offices. We're a little smaller than the tax group, but we are in New York, Dallas, and Houston. We also have one counsel in our newly established Denver office. And it's similar to, as Adriana said, we work with, across offices every day. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not speaking to someone in, Dallas or Houston. So next slide. So what is executive compensation and benefits? I think it's a type of practice that is, sort of an amalgamation of all types of different practices. If you're someone who's interested in M&A, someone who's interested in tax, someone who's interested in working with people, someone who's interested with securities, this is a great blend of all those different practices. So I sort of think about our practice organized into like a couple different buckets. The first is transactional work. So on every M&A transaction that comes through this door, we're working we're focused on the issues related to employees and executives in that transaction. So what does that mean? So if we have a private equity sponsor who's buying a target company, we look at, do they have employment agreements? Do they have severance arrangements? What type of equity do the employees hold? What's going to happen to that equity on the transaction? Is everything going to vest? Are they going to get huge payouts? Are there big change of control bonuses? These are all things we want to identify for the client. And then after the transaction occurs, we help design go forward equity and incentive compensation arrangements. So that's our first bucket, I would say, of our practice. The next is advising public companies in their day-to-day counseling work. As you may or may not know, public companies all have to do these public disclosures, and one of the major components of their public disclosures and their proxy statements is the executive compensation of their executive officers. So we assist them with that process of putting together those disclosures, and then just general day-to-day counseling work for them as well. And what we do sort of touches on tax as well. There we don't have, we're not the tax group, but we have certain specific provisions of the tax code that we're dealing with on a daily basis. When we're designing equity arrangements, we want them to be taxed, in a tax efficient manner, maybe designed to get capital gains treatment versus ordinary income treatment. There's certain tax rules that have to do with deferred compensation. So there's this very, tricky tax code provision, tax code called 409A that we deal with. You also might have heard of like the golden parachute payments. That's a provision of the tax code called 280G. So there's certain tax provisions of the tax code that we deal with on a daily basis as well. And so it's really just a practice group where you get to deal with a lot of different lawyers across the firm. We're working with the corporate team every day. We work with our tax colleagues, every day, the securities team, our labor and employment team as well, on a daily basis. So it's really a great way to get your hands on a lot of different types of projects. I don't know, Henry, if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, I think you did a great job of kind of laying out the buckets. I would just add that, especially as an associate in the group, there's not that many of us compared to some of the other bigger groups in the firm. So we really get to get involved with all of the buckets that Patricia just described. So we're really kind of expected to learn and develop in each of those, whether it be private company work, public company work, and the transactional stuff as well.
Yeah, and I would just say one more thing is you get a lot of client contact pretty early on in your career in this group. And by client contact, I mean, the executive management team. I remember being a junior associate and the CEO of a company calling me up and saying, hi, Patricia, this is your favorite Phoenix CEO calling. And he was asking about his equity arrangements. And I remember saying to the partner at the time, like, why is he calling me? Like, why isn't he calling you? And he said, well, you're the one who wrote them, so you know them better than he does. So that's why he's calling you. So it's a really great way to get client contact really, really early on in your career. I think maybe next slide.
Thanks, Patricia. Okay, so now that we've introduced you a little to what we do in the ECB and tax groups, I have some specific questions for the rest of my panel members. Although we do have a question, David, we could probably answer this one. Whether the tax group tends to originate much of its own work, or is it primarily integrated into deals led by other practice areas? Which I think is a great question. And I think B&E is pretty unique in that we have both, right? We have a lot of the tax group's work is supporting the deals that are brought in by other practice areas like our corporate group, but we do have work that is originated by the tax group, whether it's controversy work or work where the tax group has just built relationships with various internal tax groups of companies, and they're reaching out to the tax lawyers here to help advise them, whether it's on a restructuring or a specific tax issue. And David, I think you see that type of work all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It's very thoughtful. And I think it depends a little bit, like Adriana said, in the tax controversy group, Adriana and her team, they generate a lot of their own business because their client base is somebody who is in a dispute with the IRS, and that may overlap with our client base, but a lot of times it doesn't, and so they do a lot of origination. But there's definitely overlap too. Some of our clients will get audited, and but then on transactions, especially we're talking about large transactions, tax is an important part, but it's just one part, and there's lots of other legal issues and environmental and labor and ERISA, and so the corporate team tends to quarterback those and sort of make sure all the moving parts, and so on bigger transactions, I would say it's probably much less likely that tax would originate those. Although I will say we definitely participate in the origination quite a bit, and so our transactional lawyers understand, they know that tax is an important part, and so when they're out, talking to potential prospective clients about transactions and what to think about, it's often that a tax person is participating in that, has helped prepare the materials and is in the meeting. But for the most part on transactions, it's originated by the corporate group. And then we do have, as Adriana mentioned, what we affectionately refer to as the consigliere practice. And so those are relationships we have with clients that just are looking for tax advice. And it's usually, complicated tax advice about how to structure, international operations to minimize taxes. And so that is a piece of what we do. But predominantly, it's working with clients that have been sourced by other transactional attorneys. Good question.
Yes. Okay, so going back to time as an associate, I'm going to ask Henry and Myron to answer this one, but what types of training did you receive start with Myron, as a tax associate?
I was just about to say, Henry, you go first. So I think that's actually one of my favorite parts of the job is the focus and intentional training and development that we get here. I feel like I work with and for people that genuinely care about my personal and professional development, and that manifests itself in tons of ways, right? There's formal training programs, right? We have V&E Tax University, which is like a weekly series where we, for new attorneys, present different tax concepts and give an overview of the kind of things that we work on. But there's also a ton of informal training, right? And as I was kind of thinking about some questions that might arise, I was thinking, man, like training that I've gotten, like the number of hours I've logged with David on the phone where he's explained stuff to me and like talked through drafting points with me and like explain different, like very nuanced tax issues and economic issues that underlie them. I think that kind of culture and that kind of mentality where people are building a group and a firm where we expect people to be here for a long time and want, associates to be the best kind of lawyers they can be. That's been very much my experience and has been one of the primary reasons why I've enjoyed it here and have stayed.
Henry, what about on the ECB side?
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely echo Myron in that I do feel like the partners and counsel that I work for are really invested in my development and training me to be here for a while. Similarly, in ECB, we have formal training for our junior associates, ECB University, where we cover executive comp matters and tax issues along with that. But we also do kind of get a taste of what our colleagues in the rest of the firm does. So they'll bring in a finance associate or a corporate associate to walk us through. So that way we can better work with them and understand like where they search for issues, and so how we can like know when to bring them in or flag items for them. So that's been a great part on the formal side. And then informally, I just learning by doing. As I mentioned before, we're a smaller group, and most of the specialist group, I would imagine it's smaller teams if you're on a deal. So, but a lot of the times it's just me and a partner, and yeah, we go back and forth. They explain things to me and their experience, and I just learn by doing. And eventually, like once you've done the reps enough times and have discussed feedback with partners and counsel, you do start to feel more comfortable in marking up transactional documents or emailing a client and just things like that.
And just on the controversy side, in addition to the tax training, we encourage the associates to participate in some of the litigation training as well. So the motion practice workshops and trial strategy workshops and things like that. Patricia, a question for you. So if you have a law student who's interested in ECB, what classes would you recommend that student take?
Well, it's funny because David says we don't do math, and I always say we do a little bit of math in ECV. And like I said, this is a practice area that no one generally ever hears of until they attend a presentation like this or start at a law firm and meet someone who does it. So most people come in cold, right, without any specific exec comp. I didn't take an exec comp class when I was in law school. But the thing I do recommend for people doing exec comp or probably transactional just generally is doing like a finance accounting for lawyers type of class, just so you have some business vocabulary when you get here. Because the thing about, when I say we do a little bit of math is your clients have these complicated financial concepts that you need to put into words and put into the document where they work. So you need to understand how they work so that you are accurately reflecting it in the document. So I think that's really helpful. And also an Excel class, I think Excel skills are pretty useful here as well, because again, your clients will send you their financial models. Like, here's how we think, how the waterfall works. And then you have to interpret it and put it into an agreement. So I think those two classes, which aren't, specific to ECB, but I think those are really helpful.
David, any suggestions for students
Yeah.
who want to go into tax?
Those are really good. No matter what you're going to pursue, it probably makes sense to take, some corporate securities. Even if you're going to be a litigator, a lot of what is litigated about involves securities laws. And so that was a very helpful class to me. And I would recommend taking at least federal income tax, even if you think you're not going to do tax. It so permeates every transaction, and it's the foundation of, like I was saying earlier, like the blueprint of how things are structured, that having a sort of a basic understanding of federal income tax would be useful no matter what path you go down.
And Henry, you're now into your third year. Any classes that you wish you took?
As Patricia said, there's not really an ECB class, or certainly not one in law school when I was there. No, I would say a lot of it's learning by doing. I mean, perhaps if I had taken like a securities regulation class, I could maybe better understand or come in with an understanding of some of the securities and public work we do. But no, I would not say there's like a specific class that I wish I'd taken. I honestly think if I had taken another class, it might not have helped me as much, just because you really aren't able to kind of figure out what's going on until you're in the job, especially in this practice, given that we deal with so many different kind of items, whether it be tax, securities, or just deal work. So I wouldn't say there's a specific class, but I also took income tax, and I just find that helpful in my practice, but also just as a citizen of the United States, just understanding how that all works. So, but no specific class from the ECB standpoint.
Okay, so my next question is, what have you seen that makes attorneys successful in your practice group. And David, since you've been doing this the longest, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so what makes a successful tax attorney? So maybe I'd start with tax law is somewhat different than some of the other disciplines. I mean, every discipline you need some knowledge of rules and you need to be able to express those. But there are areas of the law where it's less about understanding and knowing the rules and more about making judgment calls and being a good trusted advisor to clients and providing excellent client service. And while those are important in the tax world, tax tends to be much more rules based. And so there's a very, very complicated set of rules that Congress and the Treasury have written, and they sort of change periodically. And our job is to understand what those rules are. And when our clients tell us what they want to do, we need to be able to navigate the rules in a way that gives them the best tax result. And so it's a lot of logic, it's a lot of puzzle solving, it's a lot of taking a complicated set of facts and trying to work through the rules that you're given to come out with the best outcome, or providing a series of options to choose from and being able to explain the pros and cons. And so the people who tend to succeed are the ones who really like the logic, the problem solving, that the creativity, that they're handed some issue, and not only do they have thoughts on that issue, but it brings to mind 10 other things that they aren't sure about, and they come back and say, hey, here's what I found on that one issue you asked me about, but I've got like 25 other questions because I really want to understand. That type of mentality, I think, is the kind that I've seen be most successful in the tax group.
Joe, what about you? What do you think as far as being a successful attorney in the ECB group?
Yeah, obviously, you develop the substantive knowledge over time, but I think the people who are the most successful are those who have like the great soft skills. So like you understand how to communicate with a client, right? Like how to digest an issue and give it to them in very small bites. Like they don't always want some, long memo that sort of like goes back and forth. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Sometimes they're just looking for you to like give them an answer or guide them to like the best answer that, you can give them. And so I think having those soft skills, like knowing how to communicate with clients and anticipate their needs, is really the people who succeed the most. And then just generally, I think, people who are really collaborative. Like I said, in our group, we work across many different practice groups. So I think the people who are, collaborative with your colleagues and even with, the opposing counsel on the other side, I think those are the people who really succeed.
And Myron, from your perspective, what do you think makes for a very successful junior associate?
I think this isn't tax specific, but one piece of advice that someone gave me when I was starting was just as a guide stone, think about, for whomever you're working, think about how you can make their life easier. And as I've practiced and kept that in mind, I've kind of realized like so much is rolled up into that piece of advice, right? Like if you're the junior person, assume you're going to be taking notes, or assume you have to keep track of these tasks that need to get done, or these timelines. Assume you'll have to screen share, right? Or make sure the partner has the relevant documents, at hand whenever they need them in their inbox. Those sorts of things, just anticipating and thinking about how you can make folks' life easier, I think is a really easy way to, even if you don't know any substantive law at that, right? It's a really easy way to, I think, set yourself apart.
So moving on to day-to-day, Myron, we'll stick with you. What does your day-to-day look like?
Every day is different. That's part of what I love about this job is there is no, and more broadly, what I really like about tax, you're always learning. Something is always changing. There's so much in the tax law that, you know, it would take 4 or 5 lifetimes to really dig through it all and understand it all. So there's always something to learn. And because of the depth and breadth of the types of transactions that we work on, um, you know, in the morning, you might be researching for half an hour a nuanced question. And then this is a specific day I remember thinking about this a couple months ago, but I had a call with Dutch counsel at 10 a.m. Because of the time change with European counsel. And then later that day, I was on the phone with Argentinian counsel on another deal. And then I was getting on client calls. And so my point is you get to meet a lot of really cool people and have interesting experiences, but you blink and the day goes by because you're doing really interesting things that are frankly enjoyable.
Henry, how about you? What does your day-to-day look like?
Similar, yeah, it's definitely very it's varied. So today it's you know, the end of the third quarter was a couple weeks ago, and so we're in the middle of 10Q season. So I reviewed a lot of 10Qs today to make sure that anything that needed to be disclosed from a compensation standpoint was in there. I'm on a couple of different matters, both public and private. So I had purchase agreements to mark up. And then I was also researching an interesting ACA or Affordable Care Act compliance issue. So it kind of varies. It's similar to the tax, and where we're on deals, but we're also researching kind of little questions that our clients have as well. So yeah, every day is different. Sometimes I go to bed thinking first thing in the morning, I'm going to do this. And then I wake up and it's something different. So it just kind of changes on a day-to-day basis. It does make it somewhat exciting, and things don't usually get very stale. So I do appreciate that part of the practice.
Trisha, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It changes every day. At the end of my day, I make a to-do list for the next day, and every day something pops up that I wasn't on my to-do list at the start of the day, right? Like today, I was reviewing some diligence for one deal I'm on, working up a merger agreement, and then in the middle of the day, the client emails and says, "Oh, we're hiring a new CEO. We need to do an employment agreement." So stuff like that pops up all the time. And it really keeps it interesting. And again, this area of law, like, there's always something new to learn. And even though I've been doing it for a while, there's new issues that arise all the time that I've still have never seen before. So it really keeps it interesting.
Okay, and I guess we'll go down the line. David, we'll start with you. What advice do you have for someone who is exploring a career in the tax group?
Yeah, I would say have an open mind. I think people get sort of scared off of tax because it sounds intimidating, and like Patricia said, and nobody's ever heard of executive compensation. And so, I mean, one of the good things about an internship in a big law firm is you'll get an opportunity to try out, all the various things that you might be interested in. And so I would say have an open mind and try it out. It's not as intimidating. There's no reason to be intimidated. We have in our group really strong tax lawyers who had absolutely no business background at all, that they weren't CPAs, they didn't go to business school. We have people who are journalists and criminology majors and political science and all kinds of stuff. And they just found their way because they like the subject matter, they like the people, and they like the problem solving element to it. So I guess my advice would be have an open mind, try it out, maybe take a class on it and see what you think, because it's not the most common path, but we've all found a home there, and we really love it. And I encourage you guys to take a look at it as well.
I think a lot of people just assume you need an accounting background. I tell people I had a psychology and an Italian studies background, nothing to do with tax, and still found my way here. I liked my federal income tax class in law school and then just stuck with it. Patricia, what advice do you have for someone exploring ECB?
definitely explore it because I'll take that. I think most exec comp attorneys probably would tell you they just sort of fell into it. I certainly fell into it. I didn't know about it before I started as a lawyer, and for me, it was just like really a blend of a bunch of different types of practices, like I said before. So if you're someone who's like loves, say, thinks you'd be interested in M&A, you think you're would like tax, you like securities work, like you get all of that in exec comp. And so if you're someone who likes to work on a lot of different matters at the same time, can juggle like, many balls in the air, like this is a great, exciting practice. And I think you get to deal with a lot of, high profile clients and do like really interesting, exciting work. So keep an open mind.
Myron, I have you next on my screen. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but what advice do you have for someone exploring a career in tax?
Yeah, I think and this might even be more broad than just specific to tax, but be open to learning or be eager to continuously learn, be curious. And I think the way that I think about that is, right, when you are doing interviews, you should feel, um, you know, you should feel like you can ask questions about the practice groups, ask about the day-to-day life, right? Be curious about those things because that'll help you figure out how much of a fit it is for you and whether it's something you want to further pursue and what other questions that might prompt. Just as a general principle from our law firm standpoint, it's in our interest for folks to come here and find the right practice group for them because we want people to stay as long as they can. And so I think you should likewise feel entitled to ask questions that are relevant to your career because no one will care about it more than you do. And so and I think people really enjoy it when someone expresses an interest. And I think that piece of advice is specific not just to the career search, but also when you're in transactions or when you're doing a deal or working on something, being the one that asks questions or that is willing to ask questions, I think is a trait that is often overlooked.
And Henry, last but not least, what about you? What advice do you have for someone exploring ECB?
Thanks. Yeah, I'd kind of echo everybody else. Just kind of keep an open mind. Like Patricia said, I totally fell into this. I thought I was going to do something different. And as a plug to V&E's summer program, at least in the Houston and Dallas offices, we have a rotational program. So you can rotate through the corporate group, the tax group, the ECB group, the regulatory group. So I didn't even know what ECB was until it was time to rank my choices. And I was like, executive, that's probably pretty cool. You get some exposure there. And so I was able to do a couple weeks in this practice, and then a couple weeks in our broader M&A practice. And it just kind of, I'm really glad I ended up where I am. I love being in a smaller group with colleagues that I talk to all the time. I mean, I've got great mentors here. So I just really kind of keep an open mind and try everything. So even if you think I definitely want to be a litigator, try a transactional group because you might end up loving it. So try a specialist group versus a generalist group just because you might end up loving it and might be where you end up spending the rest of your career. So yeah, I echo everybody else. Just keep an open mind and give it a shot.
And if you think you're interested in tax and litigation, please reach out to me. Okay, I think we're opening it up to others. If you have questions, that's what we were reserving the last 10 minutes for.
One thing I will say while we're waiting on questions is that both tax and ECB have in common is there is not a huge supply of tax and ECB lawyers relative. I mean, if you, I don't know what the statistics are, but if you looked at, okay, how many litigators are there in my state, there would be pages and pages. You fill they probably don't know what a phone book is, but you could fill a lot of paper with. Whereas if you said, hey, how many transactional, big transaction tax or ECB lawyers, and there will be, you fill up one page. And why does that matter? Well, it's just sort of supply and demand matter. And when there are fewer of them, they're in higher demand. We're obviously pretty critical to the transactions, and so that sort of leads to, the billing rates on tax and ECB lawyers are higher than everybody else. There's just not that many of them. They add a lot of value to a transaction. Another thing we have in common is the things we do are easy to measure, right? If you're providing advice on a merger and you include a clause, it's hard to tell whether you're right or wrong. And maybe the merger goes through, maybe it doesn't. But when you're in the tax group or the executive comp group and you provide some great advice, you can show people how much money you save them, right? Hey, I spent 5 hours on this transaction structure and you save $25 million in taxes, right? And that's a powerful thing. I mean, it's not always the case, but it's certainly in cases where tax is an important driver in the economics, it's very much appreciated by the clients that we have. And so that's another thing that sort of differentiates us. And the last thing, like I was saying, is we have an important part in almost every transaction that takes place across the firm. And so our jobs are to work on important parts of much bigger transactions, right? And so where you've got a corporate team that's going to work, quarterback a transaction, they may only work on one transaction or maybe only 2 transactions over the course of, weeks or months until the thing gets signed and closed. There's not a day goes by that the 4 or 5 of us on the phone aren't working on 10, 12, 15 matters. Maybe Adriana, when she gets into a case.
Unless we're going to trial, and then it's probably just
you're going
one
to trial.
matter.
But on the transactional side, you're working with, and that's got, I mean, obviously, like all of this stuff, there's pros and cons, but I really love that because you get to work with so many different people across so many different offices. You get to see so many different things. You get to participate in whatever's hot at the time, right? So this year, up until recently, there were no IPOs. Nobody was going public. The markets were shut down. And when there are IPOs, like, they're very tax sensitive and we're involved, but we didn't really pay attention to them very much because data centers are the big thing and everybody's building a data center and you got to power the data center. So you're building a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant. And so we just sort of get to migrate from group to group, whoever's busy, whoever's, and so you get a wide variety. You're always working on the most, current things. You get to work with different people in different offices. Once a year we have an all attorney meeting. We'll get together, and the number of people in different offices that the tax and ECB is multitudes more than in other groups because we just work with so many different people, and so it's sort of a unique experience to be able to work with that many people on that diverse of a tax base, of a transaction base. Okay, I stalled long enough. We got some questions.
We have a good question. How early in a deal do tax lawyers typically get involved? Hopefully as early as possible, right, David and Myron? But you tell me.
These are good questions. Myron, you wanna start with that one?
Yeah, as early as possible at the term sheet stage. There have been a couple times where we've seen something come in, not from our corporate team, but another corporate team, for example, where we didn't see the term sheet stage, and there were fundamental issues that needed to get addressed that could have been addressed proactively. This is kind of a side tangent, but someone I remember someone asking me like, oh, why I was interested in doing tax, and I realized you would be shocked at how many transactions go or don't go based on tax being able to work, right? Because tax is so fundamental to our clients, both in terms of how they structure things, their organizational structure, but in terms of like their financial projections, right, and what they have to report to investors or to their public filings, and so much of it is just hinges entirely on tax, and so we tend to get involved as early as possible, even when initial discussions are being made, or for us to provide our insight on those.
And how predictable is your workload, Myron? Are there a lot of fire drills? It's one of the questions that have come in.
So I think it's a client service industry, right? So there are times when something comes up when it's not necessarily convenient. I think a lot of the predictability issues that arise are not necessarily a function of the job. It's a function of being more junior and you don't have as much experience, or being able to predict how long something will take, or knowing when something might come back, right? When a document might get turned back. But slowly, as you get more senior, and slowly as you get more experience and know what the life cycle of a litigation matter is, or of a deal is, you have a better sense of what to expect and when to expect it, and you get a lot more control as that happens. That it's just harder to feel control when you're more junior, because you just don't have experience to really understand what to expect.
Yeah, I always
Patricia, what
say that.
about
I
you?
always say that, Myron. It's when you're a junior, the hardest part is like you don't understand the cadence like of a deal yet, right? When you're doing transactional work. So every email that comes in, you're sort of like, is this urgent? Is this a right now thing? Is it a tomorrow thing? You just don't understand. And so I think that's where, the predictability is an issue, is at the junior levels. And for our practice, I think there's like, like I said, there's sort of two buckets. When you're working on an M&A transaction, you're sort of, at the mercy of the timeline of an M&A deal. And so it's not as unpredictable as I think like M&A can be, because you're not, fully immersed in it like the M&A lawyers are. But you are sort of tied to that. But like on the flip side, we do a lot of public company, proxy work and advisory work, and that stream is a lot more predictable, and when the proxies need to be filed, and you just sort of work backwards on that timeline. So not as many fire drills when you're trying to do that type of work.
Yeah, and that's similar to the controversy side. We know when our briefs are due. We know when we're going to trial. We know when privilege logs are due, so you can work backwards and usually plan around it. A question came in on tax disputes. What types of tax disputes does the team handle? Really a broad range. We generally will represent partnerships, corporations, and sometimes individuals in tax disputes. The issues, like I said, it's a wide variety. We handle a lot of partnership tax matters. So that tends to be a lot of our caseload, but we also handle things that are specific to corporations, foreign tax credits, NOL related issues, basis adjustment issues, sometimes a charitable contribution deduction, really a wide range. I guess we have time for one more question, and that question is, why B&E? Patricia, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. So, I started my career at another law firm in New York, and I was there for 11 years. And I came to V&E, and this is, man, just like a really nice place to practice big law. The people are super smart and nice and down to earth and friendly. And I know you hear that about every law firm, but I have a basis for comparison, and it is really, the culture here is really great. I think it's sort of that Southern Texas culture that sort of permeates throughout the whole firm. We feel it in New York as well. So for me, it's just been about, great work, great sophisticated work, super smart colleagues, really nice, friendly, down to earth people. And I think this, if you're going to do big law, there's no better place than V&E.
Henry, what about you?
Yeah, echo everything Patricia just said. I knew I was kind of looking to practice in Texas, Houston specifically, and I knew that V&E was kind of top of the market for the state. So I definitely knew this was kind of like this is the golden ring I was shooting for. It kind of worked out, and it is just blown away my expectations, how friendly everybody is, the devotion to doing good work, and the devotion to developing the junior associates, And yeah, just, I don't have a reference point. I have not worked at another law firm, but this has been a great place to start my career. And I see myself continuing on here at B&E.
Myron?
I think just across the board in terms of mentorship, in terms of training, in terms of cutting edge types of transactions that I get to work on, in terms of having mentors and examples of people that emulate, I have people that I want to emulate whose technical proficiency I want to emulate, and they have the same values I do, and so I think across the board everyone's at the top of their game in all facets, and it makes me want to do better, and so I didn't think there was any place where I could get the kind of training that I could work on cooler or better deals than I'd be working on with people that I like any more than I do. Just across the board, it's been a great experience.
David?
Everybody took everything. Yeah, it's definitely the people. I mean, once you know what you want to do, if you want to work in a big law firm with sophisticated transactions, and whether it's in litigation or transactional or tax, there, you can narrow that down to a handful, I don't know, in your whatever jurisdiction, whatever geographic area you want to be in. And if V&E is in that area, I would think hard about it, because although I've, like Henry and Myron, I've not been at another law firm. You certainly know people who have been at other law firms, and you hear some of the stories, and it just sometimes just floors me, how other law firms operate, how people treat each other, how they sort of treat clients and subordinates, and at V&E it is just, it's hard to describe what a special place it is. And I mean, some of my closest friends are at V&E. Today we had our Halloween party, and everybody brought their little kids up, and I got to hold all the babies. And I remember my partner that I worked for came to the hospital when, right after my kids were born. And I mean, it's just a very special place where we have a lot of smart people who really care about each other. And when you get to where, Adriana and I are, where you get, lots of calls to go other places, and you just can't imagine waking up in the morning and not seeing the people that you see every day. You're in a pretty special place, and to me, that's why B&E is the right fit, and I've really enjoyed my time here. All right, I think we are out of time. Maybe just to wrap up, if we appreciate everybody hanging on. Hopefully you got a good sense, a little bit of a sense on what we do in the tax and the executive comp groups. And I would encourage all of you, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the people who are on the panel today. You can get our contact information off the website, or anybody else at V&E. Certainly wish you guys the best. I know you got finals around the corner, and certainly hope your first semester is going well, and really hope to get an opportunity to meet each of you guys in person at some point.